At 82 years old, Henry Flagler rode the first passenger train into Key West after building 156 miles of railroad across water, storms, and swamp. Most men would have retired after helping build Standard Oil. Flagler treated Standard Oil like Act 1. Act 2 was crazier. Take a poor, half-wild coastline, connect it with rails, fill it with hotels, power, water, newspapers, and ports, and turn it into modern Florida. This is the playbook of the man who walked away from Rockefeller and built an empire in the sun. Flagler did not begin as a railroad king. He began as a 14-year-old clerk in Bellevue, Ohio, earning $5 a month plus room and board. He learned grain, credit, timing, and the brutal difference between cash flow and dreams. Then he learned failure. His salt venture in Michigan collapsed after the Civil War, and he had to crawl back into business carrying debt. That failure mattered. It taught him that an empire is not built from one good product. It is built from a system. When John D. Rockefeller needed capital for oil refining, Flagler helped bring in money and discipline. In 1870, Rockefeller, Andrews, and Flagler became Standard Oil. Within 2 years, it was producing 10,000 barrels a day and leading American refining. Flagler was not the face. Rockefeller was. But Flagler understood the machine: finance, logistics, rail access, scale. Lesson 1: systems beat products. Standard Oil was not powerful because oil was magical. Everyone had oil. Standard Oil became powerful because it controlled the boring things around oil: refining capacity, transport costs, capital, information, and timing. Flagler watched a business become unbeatable by tightening every link in the chain. That idea followed him south. When he first saw Florida, he did not just see beaches, he saw a broken system. The weather was beautiful, but the hotels were weak. The coastline was rich, but transport was unreliable. The destination existed. The machine did not. Most investors wait for a market to appear. Flagler learned something more dangerous: build the machine first, and the market follows. Flagler's first Florida visit came in 1878, when his wife Mary was ill and doctors recommended wintering in Jacksonville. The climate helped, but not enough. Mary died in 1881. 2 years later, Flagler remarried, returned to St. Augustine, and saw the same contradiction again: paradise with no operating system. So in 1885, he bought the Jacksonville, St. Augustine, and Halifax Railroad, the first piece of what became the Florida East Coast Railway. He converted lines to standard gauge because different track sizes made connection impossible. Then he built the Hotel Ponce de Leon, a 540-room palace in St. Augustine. It opened in 1888 and became the proof of concept. He was not selling transportation. He was selling arrival. Lesson 2: own the destination, not just the route. A railroad by itself is a commodity. A hotel by itself is a risk. But a railroad that delivers wealthy passengers to your own hotels is a flywheel. Every mile of track made the next resort more valuable. Every resort made the next mile of track more rational. Flagler pushed to Daytona, then Palm Beach. In 1894, his system reached West Palm Beach, and he built the Royal Poinciana on Lake Worth. It became one of the largest resorts in the world. He built the Breakers. He built Whitehall. He was not guessing where tourists wanted to go. He was designing where they would want to go, then making himself the route, the room, and the reason. Here is the turn. Flagler did not predict Florida. He manufactured Florida. That sounds exaggerated until you look at the mechanism. Rails brought people. Hotels kept them. Land companies sold the dream. Agriculture moved north on his tracks. Harbors connected trade. Streets, water, power, and newspapers made raw settlements feel inevitable. The genius was not one asset. It was sequencing. Most builders ask, "What does the market want?" Flagler asked, "What would make the market exist?" That is why the Florida story matters to the Empire Playbook. He did not just enter demand. He engineered the conditions for demand, then owned the choke points when it arrived. Lesson 3. Infrastructure creates cities. After the freezes of 1894 and 1895 damaged northern Florida's citrus crop, the logic of the railroad moved south. Landowners wanted connection. Flagler wanted the next node. By 1896, the Florida East Coast Railway reached Biscayne Bay, the largest accessible harbor on Florida's east coast. Then came the city-making. Flagler dredged a channel. He built streets. He instituted the first water and power systems. He financed Miami's first newspaper, the Metropolis. When the settlement incorporated in 1896, residents wanted to name it Flagler. He refused and pushed them toward Miami instead. That detail is the whole strategy. He did not need his name on the city. He needed the city on his network. Then, at the age when most men protect the fortune, Flagler gambled again. In 1905, as the United States moved toward the Panama Canal, Flagler looked at Key West. It was the closest American deep-water port to the canal route, and he believed the next trade corridor would run through it. So he extended the railway beyond Miami, 156 miles toward Key West, much of it over water or marshland. They called it Flagler's Folly. The work took 7 years. At times, 4,000 men were employed. 5 hurricanes threatened the project, and 3 caused major damage. Nearly half the distance had to be lifted on steel and concrete bridges. Elihu Root, the U.S. Secretary of State, called it second only to the Panama Canal in political and commercial importance. On January 22, 1912, just after his 82nd birthday, Flagler rode into Key West on the first official train. The Oversea Railroad was heroic, expensive, and contested. Later history would not be gentle to it. The Key West extension struggled commercially, and the 1935 Labor Day hurricane destroyed the line. But the deeper legacy had already escaped the tracks. Flagler had shown that infrastructure is not background. Infrastructure is destiny. Standard Oil taught him how scale works. Florida let him prove it in public. Connect the route, own the experience, add the services, make the place legible, and capital will follow. He died in 1913 after a fall at Whitehall. But the system kept moving. Palm Beach, Miami, the East Coast, tourism and agriculture. The machine remained. The Henry Flagler playbook is simple. Do not chase demand. Build the system that creates it. Do not own only the product. Own the route, the room, the utilities, the story, and the choke point. And when everyone else thinks the map is finished, look for the empty coastline. Flagler began at $5 a month. He helped build Standard Oil. Then he built the rails that made modern Florida possible. If you want the next empire, subscribe. We'll see you in the next one.